So I want to go to one of the most dominant issues of truth in the American landscape. As I just said, you've lionized...
Coming from an Australian here, this is the dominant issue of truth. Okay, let's hear it, Sarah.
Let's take a look at an interview of a U.S. Congresswoman and a Australian journalist. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the premise of this interview was the Australian broadcaster wanted to talk to a sitting U.S. Congresswoman about the Julian Assange case. As you know, Julian Assange is an Australian citizen, and he has finally been allowed to return to his country after being incarcerated. He has reached a settlement deal with the U.S. government over the publication of stolen military and espionage documents or intelligence community documents. I just want to say quickly, no matter where you stand on this, and I understand both sides of the equation here on the data that was stolen by Edward Snowden and Bradley Manning, and the publication of it that many people believe put our servicemen in harm's way, and that's obviously a problem. I just want to say, though, I'm pretty sure that if the New York Times or the Washington Post or CNN had done exactly what Julian Assange had done, they would be martyrs for freedom of the press, and they would be protected at all costs. But because Julian Assange had his own independent free website, he was the most dangerous man on the planet. Also, by the way, I think the real reason they went after him was not because of what Edward Snowden and Bradley Manning stole and gave to him. I think it had to do with all of those John Podesta emails that exposed Hillary Clinton and could very well have helped spike her campaign. I think that's the real crime that Julian Assange committed. That said, in Australia, they have a vested interest in following this story since Assange is now back in that country as an Australian citizen, a free man after his settlement. So here's the interview with Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Again, this is about Julian Assange, right? Let's watch.
You've never accepted the results of the 2020 presidential election. Indeed, you've lionized people for the attack.
Sarah, aren't we talking about Julian Assange or even a serious interviewer? I thought we're talking about Julian Assange here today.
We are.
That's what you were asking me to come on your Australian news. I don't usually do interviews like this because people like you can't be taken seriously.
You've lionized.
Coming from an Australian here, this is the dominant issue of truth. Okay, let's hear it.
So you've lionized people imprisoned for their role in attacking the Capitol on January the 6th, including visiting them in prison. What will Donald Trump's MAGA supporters do if he loses the election?
What does this have to do with Julian Assange again, Sarah? I think that was the purpose of our interview. Here, let me tell you something that you don't quite understand. In 2020, America watched riot with BLM riots that caused over $2 billion in our communities and cities across the country. What the Australian people know that probably don't like your show very much, but they do understand the truth, is that in America today, we have a two-tier justice system. The Justice Department, the DOJ, targets their political enemies, and President Trump is the very top of that. And people that protested the election on January 6th are also the target of it. And what you probably don't tell your viewers is that many of these people that are being arrested and put in jail simply walked into the Capitol building through open doors and videoed and took pictures of the inside of the Capitol, and then they walked out through doors. And that's, I'm sure, not the images that you show on your network in Australia, but it's a shame because that's what the media has done and twisted and lied. That's why we applaud Julian Assange, because he didn't twist and lie and tried to pervert the truth. He told the truth, and we appreciate him for that.
If Biden wins, will you accept the result?
What does this have to do with Julian Assange? What network is this? What is this, ABC in Australia? Is she getting any marching orders from the Democrat Party? Is this what you decided to come up with today?
You're a prominent figure in US politics. The first debate is tomorrow. The result of the election is on the minds not just of Americans, but of the whole world. It's a natural point of curiosity, but I understand that we've reached the end of the questions that you want to answer. Thank you for talking to us about Julian Assange and for joining the program.
Thank you.
I do like, Marjorie, people ask about, what Trump has done to American politics and how Trump has made, Trump's greatest sin from the corporate media's perspective, from the left-wing Marxists of the world's perspective, and from the establishment type politicians, whether Republican or Democrat, his greatest sin is that he has taught other politicians like Marjorie Taylor Greene that they don't have to roll over and play the nice guy anymore. That they can call bull on reporters like this or journalists like this that set you up and try to back you. Now, that being said, let me just again, if come on in, we want to talk about Julian Assange. Will you accept the results of the election? Will you storm the Capitol if you lose the election again? I have no doubt that this will be the first question from Jake Tapper tonight to Donald Trump. So this is a couple of things that need to be pointed out here that are sort of a good sort of roadmap for the way this conversation goes, or for that matter, if you have to engage in this conversation with somebody at a family affair, a family gathering, maybe on your Facebook page, maybe standing on the sideline of your kid's soccer game while you're watching 8-year-olds chase a ball around the field. Why are you standing there in the sun? Why? What did you do to deserve this, right? I feel your pain. I was there once. And then, of course, you engage in the conversation. Wow, those MAGA extremists, right? A couple things that I want to point out here. First of all, the original question here that she asked is, maybe she can be forgiven because she's Australian and she doesn't quite know it. But let's watch this original question that was asked.
I don't usually do interviews like this because people like you can't be taken seriously.
You use the term truth as the reason why you have been so supportive of Julian Assange. So I want to go to one of the most dominant issues of truth in the American landscape. As I just said, you've lionized.
Coming from an Australian here, this is the dominant issue of truth. Okay, let's hear it, Sarah.
So you've lionized people in prison for their role in attacking the Capitol on January the 6th, including visiting them in prison. What will Donald Trump's MAGA supporters do if he loses the election?
Yeah, that was the question. What will Donald Trump's MAGA supporters do if he loses the election? And one appropriate response, if Marjorie Taylor Greene wanted, and I'm certainly not correcting Marjorie Taylor Greene and how she handled herself here, but she could have also responded by saying, well, you know what, let's, I know you want to talk about 2020, but let's go back to 2016 for a moment, because the supporters of Hillary Clinton, and for that matter, Hillary Clinton herself, and her allies in the federal government, including the director of the FBI and other attorneys and officers at the FBI in Washington, D.C., they didn't take too kindly to the results of the 2016 election, right? Now, I could focus on the riots that occurred in Washington, D.C. on Inauguration Day in 2017. I know that everyone wants to forget that, but go back and watch the videos. I lived in Washington, D.C. I work in Washington, D.C. I saw what happened, where people were rampaging through the city in protest of the inauguration. It's not like Hillary Clinton supporters just said, well, that's it. It's over. Peaceful transfer of power. Let's go. Not to mention the fact that 2 weeks before Inauguration Day, Barack Obama held a meeting in the Oval Office with Joe Biden, with James Comey, with Susan Rice, and other high-placed people in the final days of the Obama administration, and put into motion a secret investigation of the incoming president and his administration. Susan Rice was so obviously cognizant of the fact that what they were doing was subverting the next administration that she wrote in her daily journal, President Obama made sure that this was all done by the book. Who writes that? And of course, we've learned that it wasn't done by the book. It wasn't done by the book in any stretch of the imagination, not in any way whatsoever. And then, of course, we know that the entire Trump presidency was subverted, not from some MAGA supporters who were storming the Capitol one day for 3 hours. And as Marjorie Taylor Greene said, most of them walked through doors held open by Capitol Police. No. The Trump presidency was subverted from within by bureaucrats with power. And that power was used to undo the presidency and undo his reelection attempts. But that doesn't really fly on the radar of these journalists, certainly not in Australia, and certainly not here in this country. I mean, you tell me, what is more dangerous to democracy? The 4 hours of mayhem that was bad on January 6th, or the ongoing insidious use of our government power to subvert the election by going after and undermining the actual president of the United States and his administration and his cabinet. And then now the use of government power to actually jail the president's political opponent. I mean, I know what I think is more dangerous. I know what keeps me up at night more. Good for Marjorie Taylor Greene. And again, it's a great, just like with Tucker earlier, it's a great lesson on how to deal with these people and how to handle them. Oh, and one more thing. If you are asked on the sideline of that soccer game or on your Facebook page, you know, if you'll accept the results of the election, the best answer is, listen, as long as the Democrats don't cheat again, of course I'll accept the results. See what they do in response to that. I'd love to see their response.